All right, hello everyone. Um, Time for another voting method um, and another little video just to explain some kinds of problems that we can do. So for right now, we're going to talk about approval voting. This one is really simple in terms of just how it's set up. Um, an approval voting system is one in which a voter is given a list of candidates, and all the candidates are listed to them. Order does not matter, and they vote on whether or not that they are acceptable or not acceptable. So no ranked choice usually. Some ballots will combine them, but in a true approval vote, all they do is they put a check mark next to any candidate that they feel is acceptable, um, rather than voting for their first choice, second choice, third choice, or anything like that. Um, and then the winner is the candidate with the most acceptable checks. Um, as you can tell, this is a little bit different than just your simple plurality vote, simply because you're also giving credence to anybody who has any sort of probability. So, like, of doing well in that particular position. So, one of the problems that can exist with um, with a plurality vote is you could have two really strong candidates that are, both kind of the same and or very similar in terms of their potential, but you have to choose one. Um, and sometimes it's really difficult to make that choice, right? Especially for the uninformed. Um, so this is somewhat of an interesting method that you can use when you have just a general idea of what kind of candidate that you like. Okay, again, brutally simple and effective. There is little room for manipulation or fraud here. It's just you check the checks or you don't. This was used to select the Pope between 1294 and 1621, for those of you that are counting. Um, and currently, they use a method of kind of a conclave, is what the official name of it is. And selecting the Pope nowadays is very similar to, say, a jury trial, in which you have a group of cardinals that go into a room, a locked room, they deliberate among each other, and they have to reach a unanimous consensus on who the next Pope is going to be from, what, 10, 12 candidates or whatever that is. Um, and as a side note, that I've also mentioned in class, one of the interesting things about the Pope's process is, at the end of any given day, if they have not selected a Pope yet and they are still deliberating, then they'll go to a fireplace at St. Peter's Basilica and they will release black smoke from the chimney, as a signal to the outside world that they are still deliberating. And they'll do that every day, until they select a pope. And when they have agreed on a pope, they send out white smoke. And white smoke signals all the people around that they've selected a new pope, and hey, rejoice, rejoice. Um, it can be done in as little as a day or two, or sometimes it can take as much as a month. It depends on the situation. Anyway, so other than that, so approval voting is highly is simple, effective, and can be very fair. One other interesting thing about approval voting, right? That's also important is that approval voting can break a majority, and I'll write that down here. So this is very important, and I'll explain this in a second. It can break a majority. In other words, what I mean by that is that you could have a candidate who has in any other election would have a majority of the popular vote, yet may lose in an approval voting system. And here's a good um, example of that. Let's say we have candidate A, B, and C, and let's say we'll just say that there's like five candidates, right? One, two, three, four, five, or sorry, five voters, I mean. And let's give them some preference rankings. Let's say for our purposes here, we get one, two, three, one, two, three, one, two, three, one, two, three. But the last person happens to vote 3-2-1. Okay? All right. So what could sometimes happen in this case is, again, everybody has to, now this is a ranked choice. I know this is not approval voting, but this is important to realize by combining the two together. So like you could have in any other election type, you could have candidate A easily winning this by a score of 4-1. A gets 4, C gets 1, B gets nothing, right? But let's say, for example, so plurality, A wins 4-1, okay? B gets nothing. Same thing would happen in a runoff, right? In a runoff, B is eliminated. But let's say, for example, people on this ballot consistently, let's say they consistently approve of top two. So let's say they consistently approve of their top two candidates. And we'll use check marks for that, right? So check, 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 check. And what's going to happen here is that if this were run by approval, B would win with 5 votes instead of A winning by 4. So in this particular situation, if you have one candidate who is, this really happens when you have one candidate who gets all the first place votes, and then you have another candidate who is like just the second popular to everybody, but is still approved of, then you can certainly have this situation. It's again the case of one candidate who you either love him or hate him versus another candidate who is generally well liked by everybody. Um, so again, that comes into play in several situations. So let's take a look at how that applies to an election. We'll go over, again, I'm not going to give you a direct example of an approval system. Literally, all you do is you count check marks. So B wins approval. Vote. So yeah, B would win in that sort of system. Again, I'm not going to give you any examples. You can count check marks. I'm pretty confident of that. So let's go through and see again a kind of a practice problem where we kind of combine a little of everything. It's important to see, rather than just doing this, how approval vote fits in with the other methods. So for that, let's study the 1912 presidential election. And here are the votes. These are approximate. I do know that Wikipedia has slightly different values in these, but this is what we have. Okay. So if we take a look at this, there's Wilson, there's Roosevelt, there's Taft. Woodrow Wilson, he's the one who does win the presidency. Roosevelt has 4,119,000. Taft, a little bit less. Okay, Taft is the incumbent president. So a little bit about this election, just kind of the flavor behind this. Woodrow Wilson does win this. He's the president. He serves 2 terms, takes us through World War I. Okay. But Roosevelt's the important piece here because Roosevelt was already president for 7.5 years up to this point. He is president. He becomes president in 1901 because he serves out the remainder of William McKinley's term. William McKinley is assassinated. Roosevelt is the vice president. He serves out 3.5 years of McKinley's 4-year term. So he then wins re-election, right? And so he serves until 1909. Oops. He serves all the way until 1909. So what's interesting here is that he serves basically 2 full terms, but was only elected to 1. So he is free to kind of run for another term. There's nothing stopping presidents at this point from running for as many terms as they wanted to. That rule doesn't exist for a long time yet. But everybody's stuck to 2 terms. Roosevelt was in this unique situation that he has essentially only ran once. Um, so he decides, and in 1908, he bows out. Again, due to the past precedent being that, you know, you had your 2 terms. Roosevelt decides to give up. Taft becomes president. Roosevelt comes back. He doesn't like what Taft is doing. So he comes back, wants to run again. He's a little bit unsure about it. The Republican National Convention says, no, Taft is our current president. Let's go with him, right? Roosevelt says, fine. So he's not going to become the Republican nominee. He decides instead to form his third party. Um, he forms the Bull Moose Party, um, full of progressive Republicans. So he is like a centrist, but kind of like a right centrist here. Um, Wilson is a left centrist. Debs is a socialist, right? And so if you look at the political spectrum here, and actually that's kind of important. I know this is the math, and I always say we're not going to get much into the politics, but the political spectrum is pretty important here. Debs is far left. He's a socialist Democratic candidate. Wilson is center left. Roosevelt is center right. And Taft is definitely on the conservative end. So he is on the right side. Um, and so these candidates each have an um, interesting view. This election would be the last election in which a Democrat um, or Republican finished less than second place. So this is the last time that Democrats or Republicans would finish in third or beyond place, which is very interesting. Now, one thing to keep in mind here that's also important with this election, okay, is that's also, which I haven't given here, is the electoral vote breakdown. You're going to notice this is a really kind of split out popular vote. And Wilson has got, at this point, so 437, he's got 40 something percent, maybe 42% of the popular vote here. So, which is really kind of not much. The voter electoral college breakdown, though, is really interesting based on this. 435, 88, and 8. And if I add that up correctly, that adds up to 531. That total may not be completely correct. I'd have to look it up. Um, so the voter breakdown adds up to, yeah, I think that's accurate. It might be 437. But anyway, here's the idea. Wilson, despite having not really a huge lead, he crushes the Electoral College. Absolutely crushes it. Simply because this breakdown kind of happens in a lot of states. And so Wilson ends up winning a lot of states by a small margin because Roosevelt and Taft, believe it or not, they split the conservative vote. Which makes sense because Roosevelt was a Republican for 7.5 years. So now we wonder what happens in situations where they don't split the vote. Okay. All right, so we're going to have some information now. So now, again, there was no ranked choice system back in this day. So instead, we're going to look at some possible information that we have based on what we know about people's political leanings. Okay, so let's assume this. Number one, anyone not voting for Debs would rank him last. 75% of Wilson supporters prefer Roosevelt to Taft. 80% of Roosevelt supporters prefer Taft to Wilson, and 85% of Taft supporters prefer Roosevelt to Wilson. The reason that we can pick these up is this seems to make sense based on the fact that if a candidate of their choosing is not available, like a runoff, or they bow out of the election, or after a primary or something, if their candidate of choice is not available, they'll go to the next available candidate who has the closest political leaning. Um, so Wilson supporters, now Wilson is kind of on the center. Wilson's in the center and he's center left. So more people are probably going to go to center right and prefer Roosevelt because Roosevelt did have a lot of popular policies. Um, and then the same thing for the others. Roosevelt and Taft, because they're both more on the conservative end, they're going to support each other. Um, okay. So furthermore, we'll talk about approval choices in a bit. 60% of voters approve of their second choice, none approve of their third or fourth choice. So our next goal is going to be to try to build a ranked choice table based on this. All right, seems like a lot, but that's why we have a trusty calculator here. And here is my trusty calculator. For this, we don't have to worry about the big calculator. I'll just go to a standard, kind of a small calculator there. Okay, all right, so let's do this. Okay, so here's what we know. Wilson. So first off, we're going to build a ranked choice table, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to build a table where we have what choices can each one provide. So first things first, we're going to choose by writing this out. We know that in most cases, Roosevelt, so Wilson, Roosevelt, and Taft are going to be ranked in some order of 1, 2, and 3. So let's write out what all those orders are. And there's also Debs too. Now Debs is going to finish in fourth for all of these. And so for the purposes that we're going to do here, I'm not even going to bother writing in it. So we're going to say 1, 2, 3, but they could also go 1, 3, 2, 2, 1, 3, 3, 1, 2, or it could go 2, 3, 1, or 3, 2, 1. Okay. And then finally, in the last column, I'll put Deb's voters. So Deb has that group of people that vote him in first place. But it doesn't say how would they vote if it weren't for Debs, right? So what would their second choice be? Well, assuming political leanings, Deb's voters are Democrat, so they'll go to Wilson next, followed by Roosevelt, followed by Taft. They're going to go in order of the political spectrum. So we're going to assume that here. But that's only in the case of Debs voters. And Debs voters, if you recall, there's not many of them. There is 900,369. Okay. All right, so 900,369. All right, now let's look at the rest of this table. So here, we want to know what exact number of voters each one of these falls into. Okay, so let's remember that what we were told. We were told that 75% of Wilson's supporters prefer Roosevelt to Taft. 75%. Therefore, 25% go here. And that's 75% of Wilson's supporters. So of the 6 whatever million people that voted for him, right? So that means we could figure this out. So let's find the exact number. The exact number is 6293152, and we're going to multiply it by 0.75. And that's going to get us 4,719,864. So that represents the total number of voters, 4,719,864. Okay, so it represents the total number of voters that would rank Wilson first, Roosevelt second, and Taft third. Simply because we knew that of all the Wilson supporters, 75% of them preferred Roosevelt as their second place. let's do the same thing for the others. So the Roosevelt supporters, right? Roosevelt supporters, 80% of them preferred Taft to Wilson, therefore 20% here. Okay, finally, for Taft supporters, 85% of Taft supporters preferred Roosevelt. Okay, so let's go back and find the rest of those numbers. So 0.25 times 4 million. So times what number was that? 6293152 1573288. Okay, so we'll put that here. 1,573,288. And we're going to do that for all the rest of these as well. So we want 20% of Roosevelt's voters, 80% of Roosevelt's voters. Okay, so let's do that. 0.2 times 4119207, and that's 823,841. Okay. Now, it is a decimal. We can round it to the nearest whole person here. We don't have to worry about like losing half a vote or anything like that, because we know that percentages are generally rounded anyway. And then finally, 4119207 times 8, 3295,365.6. 295,366. Okay. Finally, 15% of Wilson's voters, or sorry, Taft voters, right? And so we just kind of fill in again from here. So 15% 0.15 times 3486333, 522,950. 22,950. And then what I could do is just simply, I'm going to cheat a little bit and just subtract it from the total votes, 3486333, and I'm going to get 2,963,383. And that's what this number is. So 2,963,383. Okay, so it's a little tough to read, but don't worry, we'll get to it. Okay. All right, so let's go through this here and see what kind of values that we can get. Notice we're not going to worry about all the other candidates. The 240,000 votes for the other candidates, certainly a wall, certainly just kind of not going to affect anything. It's a mishmash of candidates. Okay, what are the possible preference rankings? Done. 7 of them. Can we compute the approximate number of voters in each category? We totally did that. Okay, so here's all my questions. Who wins a plurality if Roosevelt doesn't run? Well, let's take a look. Okay, so we're going to assume Roosevelt doesn't run. Okay, Roosevelt doesn't run, what happens? So if Roosevelt doesn't run, then these votes are going to go away, right? And these group of people, right? These people are going to vote for their second choice. These are going to vote for Wilson. These are going to vote for Taft. Okay, and that's not going to change. So this is the case of, Roosevelt had to make the decision of whether or not to run. If that decision worked out differently, does a different president win? Let's find out. 4719,864 plus 1573288 plus 823,841. 7116993. So Wilson here has 7116 993. Okay, and the reason that we got that, of course, Wilson's voters stayed the same, but this group here of 823,000, they're going to vote for Wilson instead of Roosevelt because Roosevelt's not running. Same thing here, we'll just add together the numbers for Taft here. So basically, it's the 522,950 plus 296,383 plus 3,295,366, and that's going to get 6,781. 699. Okay, wow. Imagine that. How close is that? Okay, so very close, but Wilson would still win here. Wilson would still get the check mark. Okay, what if it happened the other way around? What if Roosevelt wins the Republican nomination instead? What if he's able to boot Taft completely out of the election and he coalesces the vote among himself? Does he win? Well, let's see. Okay, so we're going to erase the purple parts here. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. What I'll just do is do this, and let's get rid of kind of the purple ink here, and let's try this again. All right, so Taft is gone. What's going to happen? That's going to happen. Oops. Okay, I was going to use purple, whatever. Wilson supporters are still going to vote for Wilson. Roosevelt supporters are still going to vote for Roosevelt. So now let's see what happens. So Wilson's, so 4719864 plus 1573 288 plus now these if Taft is booted from the election, then this group of 522,950, their second choice was Wilson. 6816102. Oh, now right away you should probably figure that because that number is similar to what Taft had in the last election, Roosevelt is probably going to win here. So let's take a look. Okay, so in this particular case, we had Roosevelt, so it's 823, 841, plus 3295366, plus all of these are going to go to Roosevelt, 2963383, 7082, 590. Roosevelt wins in that case. Imagine that. So Roosevelt was very popular. Okay? All right. And this is what we were saying. It's extremely likely, in fact, just based on the numbers, the discrepancy between the Electoral College and the way the popular vote turned out, it's very clear that Taft and Roosevelt split a lot of conservative votes. All right, part C. Who gets a majority in a Wilson-Roosevelt runoff? Well, isn't that the same as part B? No, runoff means all other candidates are eliminated. Okay, so guess what? Now, finally, with this one, with the other elections, all we did is we booted out the one person. But if this were a runoff, what would happen? In a runoff, Wilson and Roosevelt would be here, but Taft and Debs would be gone. And all of these votes, these 900,000 votes, we can assume that a vast majority of them are going to go to Wilson. So guess what? Look at the total here. The difference here is 270,000 votes. So that's important. So let's write this down. $270,000 vote difference. Okay? So first it appears that Roosevelt would win, except Deb's voters. Deb's voters, a vast majority of them, are going to go to Wilson. And that's here lies the big thing. In order for Wilson to win, he would need about 70% of Deb's voters. That seems very reasonable. Simply because Debs is a very hardline socialist candidate, very liberal. So they're going to stay with the Democratic Party. And they can push Wilson to enact more socialist policies. Um, if you think about it, that's kind of the same that's happening with Bernie and Biden in this election. Like, Bernie being the hardline socialist candidate, he is trying to impress upon Biden to enact some of those policies. So the same thing happened here. So here we can say, without really needing to do the math, ooh, thinking the wrong. Okay, Wilson would win. Because all of those Debs voters are going to go to Wilson. And that's enough to overtake. Okay. Next question. Who wins under Borders method? Okay. Yeah, you can do the math, right? Okay. It's tough to do all this math, but you can do it. Now, obviously, Debs is kind of right out. So with this, you can either put Debs in or you can take him out. Just make sure that you do it for one and not the other. Or make sure you don't do that. If you're going to do a full Borda calculation here, okay, you either have to use Debs, and that includes writing in the fact that he's a fourth choice for all of these, or you completely ignore it. And if you ignore it here, then you should ignore all of that too. Otherwise, you might get the wrong information. So, the question though here is, can you predict who would win the board account before actually doing it? Do you think you can? So here's the deal. Now, board account, we know that it's more than just first place. You give points for first place, for second place, for third place, right? And in particular, let's look at second place. Okay? Let's look at second place votes. Wilson has, for second place votes, he has a total of what, 800,000 plus 500,000, so about 1.3, plus 9, about 2.2 million second place votes. How many does Taft have? Second place votes 1.5 and about here about 3,295,000. So he's got, am I looking at this table correctly? 80%, or yeah, I'll look at this, right? Preferred Taft to Wilson. Okay, right, so about 2.2 million. Yeah, let's look at Taft. So Taft's second place votes 1.5 million, and here he's got second place about 3.3 million. So he's got 4.5 million, a little bit more, about 4.7 million. Second place votes. How about Roosevelt? 4.7 plus about 3 million. So he's got 8.6 million. Roosevelt has a massive amount of second place votes. When you look at the total, when you look at, here's another way, look at his third place votes. Look at Roosevelt's third place votes. He has much fewer third place votes than anybody else. Simply because Roosevelt, while not the most not the most top-rated candidate, he has got a huge amount of support, and so he has a lot of second-place votes based on this situation. So Roosevelt is extraordinarily popular here. That's again, and we're not picking this out of nowhere. So we pick this out of just some suppositions involving the data that we know that makes sense. So Roosevelt has a huge amount compared to Wilson. So this fact that he's got nearly 4 times as many second place votes, when you look at it, that's going to clearly overtake Wilson's lead here. So if you go back here to the original total, and if you were to add to this, right, like these are first place votes, if you were to add to this, all the second place votes, remember that you're looking at the total character vote, just the fact that he adds like 8 million second place votes to Wilson's 2 million second place votes, it's going to build Roosevelt's numbers up really, really high. Okay. So you can do the math. And who wins under Borda's method? Now, you can go ahead and do the math, but for the sake of time, I'm going to shortcut it here. It turns out Wilson's going to have about it's around 29.5 million. And Roosevelt is going to have about 28.7. Let's see if I can look it up. I might have done this math actually already if I check. I may actually already have this on Classroom somewhere. Let's check my drive. Okay. And, oh, here we go. Oh, there's the numbers. Okay, right there. So if you can take a look, I'll make it nice and big for you. Okay. So I did actually put them in already for you. You can see how Roosevelt would win, how his second place votes are so huge that they absolutely overtake Wilson. So Roosevelt wins. Remember, Borda count lowest number wins. And we were able to make that prediction. There you go. So Roosevelt wins. Okay, Condorcet winner. Okay, we know Debs is out. So remember, this is the head-to-head winner here. Now, believe it or not, we actually don't have to do anything more for this one. What do we know that can already tell us who the head-to-head winner is? Okay. A majority in a Wilson-Roosevelt runoff. We knew Wilson was going to win there, right? Because Debs voters were going to go to Wilson. So Wilson beats Roosevelt. Now, would Wilson also beat Taft in a runoff? Do we have that information? Well, yes. Look up here. Who wins a plurality if Roosevelt didn't run? Now, Wilson here, right, and Taft, but again, in this particular case, remember that Debs voters would also have to switch, but they're just going to add more to Wilson. So, unlike before, where we were able to flip the winner here, up here, because Wilson was already beating Taft, even without a runoff, suppose we do make it a runoff, he's going to pick up all of Debs voters and have an even bigger lead. So we can say Wilson already beats Taft. Therefore, the Condorcet winner, you can kind of follow my logic here, is going to be Wilson. He's going to beat in a head-to-head match both Roosevelt and Taft. Taft easily, Roosevelt barely. Okay, who wins an approval vote? All right. So this is the last one that we have to do here. So in an approval vote, in this particular case, with the approval vote, we have, can I do, so view, zoom entire page, let's do page width. Okay, so let's scroll down here. Who wins in an approval vote? Well, remember that for the approval equals, in this particular case only, it differs from election to election. First place, all your first place votes, plus 60% of second place. Obviously, now there could be some people that approve of 3 choices, 4 choices, or more. But here we're going to go with first place plus 60% of second place. Okay, so who's going to win? Now we've already done some of that work, right? Let's go back here. We did some of that work. Where did we do that work? Here. And I think I erased it. Okay, I probably did erase it. So let's go back and let's do entire page. Oh, wait, here it is, right here. Here's my second place votes. All right, so let's do the math here. So it's going to be, for Wilson, it's all of his first place votes. So 6293152 plus 60% of, oh, they didn't like that. I'm going to have to use a scientific calculator on this one. Okay. Scientific. Okay. So 6293152 plus 0.6 times, oh, that's not what I wanted to. Okay, 6293152 plus 0.6 times, parentheses. Now, in this case, it's like, what, 2.2 million? So again, we'll kind of estimate here. It's roughly 2.2 million. Okay, so about 7.6 million. Okay, so approval is here. If I extend the page here, Wilson's going to get, again, you can do the math a little bit better, about 7.6 million. Roosevelt is going to get all of his first place votes, about 4 million something. So 4,119,207. Plus 0.6 times, it was like 8.6 million. Or something like that. So he's going to get about 9.28 million. So he's going to blow this count right out of the water. So over 9 million. So he's going to get, 9.28 million. And you can do the math and get some better numbers in that way. But essentially, yeah, he's going to get way more votes because of all those second place votes that he has. And again, that makes sense. So guess what? One thing to keep in mind here. Moral of this story, Florida's count and approval votes are built very similarly in that less proportions of people are going to vote for second place, and then less proportions for third, less proportion for fourth, and so on and so forth. And just like in a Bordas count, each successive place counts, but less so. Therefore, these two are going to have a very similar result. Um, Not quite as close this time, but Roosevelt does have a significant approval lead here. Okay. So yeah, here's a case where in a more populistic outcome or a race, Roosevelt would easily have won. So fascinating stuff. But this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to go through this problem and kind of show you like how different elections could lead to different outcomes in different situations and what all of these outcomes tell us about the candidates themselves and how popular they really were. Um, so I think that's it. For that, we don't have anything else to do. Here's some practice problems that I can always put up for you um, on Classroom. But here, I hope you like it. I hope you were able to follow all of that. Um, and have fun and good luck. Take care.